little bit more push, and of course that comes from the grassroots. This is a grassroots demonstration, by the way. The Green Party wasn't, I got actively involved in it, but it didn't start from me. It didn't start from GE Free New Zealand. We knew we'd do something on today, but it actually started from, sorry Kyle, I won't call you random, but I will call you random people in the community throughout the country that thought, we're going to be part of this international thing. On the Facebook, I think they were saying there's 400 different cities throughout the world. I would guarantee you there'll be more than 500 different cities, towns and villages internationally that will be part of this today. I left St Arnaud at Nelson Lakes first thing this morning, and there's a biodynamic conference I was up at there at. They were going to walk through St Arnaud. They reckoned they were going to have the best per capita protest because there's 100 people at the conference, and they're going to drag in the locals, and they were going to have a bit of a march there at lunchtime too. But other places popped up as well in the last 24 hours. There's Auckland, Christchurch, Wellington, and you probably looked on Facebook, you probably know. So it's a really well supported concept, and thanks for coming along. Back to the New Zealand situation. We can actually nail it in the environment in New Zealand quite easily. We only have 2 legitimate field trials happening in New Zealand. One is the scion trees at Ruakura. That's partnered with a big, mostly American company called Arborgen that sells a lot of our standard trees in New Zealand, but it is determined to be the Monsanto of the GE tree world internationally. They want to follow the same format of patenting and getting into forests, and they'll have the contamination, they'll end up having the control. So that's Scion, our own, we all own it. Crown Research Institute partnered up with an American company. There's a little bit of New Zealand in there too, but it's nearly all US. So that's one field trial. The other field trial is Ag Research. Ag Research is up at Ruakura at Hamilton, and it's doing the animal trials on genetic engineered animals, cows and goats at the moment. They have permission to use sheep, and nearly any sort of cell from nearly anything they can use in their experiments there. They've got a very broad mandate from WASIRMA, Environmental Risk Management Authority, now the Environmental Protection Authority. So there's all sorts of animal welfare issues there. It shouldn't be happening there. There's very crude control about fluids and material that can potentially go off that site into the Waikato River effectively and under Hamilton. So just 2 field trials, and that would be all the field trials. We have no commercial releases except for one vaccine for horse flu, effectively, equine influenza. It's not needed, it can be stopped too, and that would be it for living organisms, GE organisms in the wider environment in New Zealand. We have one other problem that we could push back on as well, and that is animal feed. There's a lot more and more genetically engineered soy, cottonseed and canola meals being fed to the farm animals in New Zealand. So if you're buying non-organic poultry, it will be fed with at least 15% GE soy probably in its meal. That doesn't need to happen. We've got good grain farmers in New Zealand that have got stocks on hand at the moment unsold of grain. We should be pushing back, having New Zealand sovereignty over our food supply. So including it, looking after our farmers, looking after our consumers. Because we've got a couple more speakers, I'll try not to speak too much longer, but I'll just say about what is in New Zealand food. In terms of genetic engineering, it's hard to tell. We have a crude GE labelling law for food in this country. So that's if there's a genetically engineered flour from soy or corn or something like that, it should be labelled that it's genetically engineered. However, our government, and repeated governments I'll tell you too, have not enforced that since 2003. It's the last time they looked to see whether the GE labelling laws are being enforced. So one of the take-home things from here, there's a petition going around. Phil, put your name on that. That is to go in to the House of Parliament and for us to get this issue back on in front of Parliament to say we need to be enforcing that law. Not only that, we need to be strengthening it so the GE oils like canola oil and all of that, which don't have to be labelled, must be labelled. You deserve them to be labelled. And so Nikki Kay is our Food Safety Minister. You know what to do, but the petition might do it. I've met with her. I've said we need to be doing more about that. We need to have proper food labelling, but more than that, she needs to be putting genetic modification as something to be considered as the food safety issue back into the food bill that's coming up this year. The food bill it was about food risk and risk of whether how you're selling it, how you're processing it, what's happening in restaurants, all of that. It's not too bad in the general guideline of appropriate risk. You know, if you're Fonterra, the big factory, obviously there's a lot more involved than a cake shop down the road here. So they've got that strata, but what they did was take genetic modification out as something that needed to be considered as a food safety issue. So in my role, I've met with Kate Wilkinson, which is Food Safety Minister, gave her a bundle of stuff, and we've now got Nikki Kay, done the same thing for her, and we're meeting with her again to see if we can progress that a bit more. The foods that you should be wary of, there's soy. Nearly any soy, if it's not organic or labelled as GMO free, assume it is genetically modified. So if you're a soy user, make that call and throw that out and just go with organic or GMO free labelled soy. Corn, if it's imported, the corn meal that's in New Zealand should not be genetically engineered. We've got a zero tolerance, but again, I'm not sure when they last tested for the corn seed that's being used. But imported products like corn chips and that from overseas, unless they're organic again, they will be most likely genetically modified. Canola, we mostly see it in oil. That isn't labelled, doesn't have to be labelled, but we will try and get it labelled. Cottonseed oil is used in some things, it's much the same. FSANZ, Food Standards Australia New Zealand, that makes those decisions, has never said no, although to any application for genetically modified, call it GE, food line. So they've given the tick to 76 different food lines, some which aren't even commercially available, and the latest one, the US Department of Agriculture, where it comes from effectively, has said, whoops, just a moment, we've got to do a bit more testing before we will let it out into the environment of the US. Yet our FSANZ, Food Standards Australia New Zealand, has given it the tick. It's a useless crock of the proverbial. It's a farce in terms of food safety. And I will in fact pass you over to Jack Heinemann now from Canterbury University, and he might start his thing, although he'll talk about international situation. Jack has submitted to FSANZ highly technical stuff, and you might be telling us about the latest one, Jack, before you go into the rest of your talk. You're not? Okay. Double-stranded RNA.